I'm happy to be here again, and last year was also equally exciting. Lots of good conversations that I can remember today. Without wasting much time, we've only 29 minutes left. We will start with the topic. The topic, as was given to me, is redefining legal careers, opportunities beyond law firms. One theme that I witnessed in the past 1 year is in discussions with many GCs, where they told me that many times the CEO leans on to them when he takes a business decision, where he has to give a go-ahead and the CEO takes a decision. So I asked the GCs whether the role of the GC in the companies that they work is expanding, whether they are getting a say in management roles. I remember this was in case with a company which is a hotel aggregator, where they have management contracts with various hotels. And he told me that many times, many deals have got the go-ahead rejected because he's told the CEO, no, you can't go ahead with this. It's not in consonance with the long-term vision of the company. This is how I experienced how the GC's mandate has increased within the own company, but that's just one. This topic is very broad. It speaks about, like the panelists we have today, my friend here is also a legal recruiter. And in fact, I would like to start with you first. You got into the business of, recruiting lawyers after having practiced as a partner in a law firm. Could you start with how you got into this?
So I graduated from NLU Jodhpur, and then I started my career with Amarchand Mangaldas in Bombay and then Delhi. But during my law school days, I was very fascinated with the business side of law. And when Vahura was kickstarting its operations after its spin-off from the previous organization, that's when I joined the organization. The interest always was in interacting with people, but also understanding how we can help them do things better. And that's when it sort of coincided with the legal industry per se. It sort of made all the more sense for me. Now, interestingly, my journey with Vahura has been fascinating, but I also, in between, moved back into the profession of law, and that's why I wanted to clarify that Lakshmanan and Sridharan happened much after I moved into legal recruitments. And for a very brief period of time, I was there, and actually more than 2 years. And I was a joint partner focusing on various areas of law, along with international business development, client relations. But the idea again was to how we could service the legal industry by really adding more value to it by not practicing the law, but ensuring that we match the best people to the best roles. And that's when it's all about ensuring what value you can bring to the table. It's not so much about that you've graduated from a law school, whether a premier one or a traditional one or an up-and-coming one, it doesn't matter. What matters is what you want to do in the long run, what value you can bring to the legal ecosystem. It's not so much about just going to the court. Respect to all the professions, but whatever you realize that you can add value to, that could be something that you could focus on.
So as the legal industry formalizes, the need for assistance in recruitment will grow.
Absolutely, and we are seeing that, right? For the last so many years, specifically when the legal industry is moving towards more sophistication.
Yes.
Right? And also with, hopefully, and that's a separate seminar I'm assuming will happen on the liberalization part later on.
No, but very interesting because that will open up so many opportunities with foreign
and
law
we're
firms.
already seeing that, right? There's a lot of interest already from the international markets as to what's going to happen to India. And that's where a lot of conversations are happening just to understand what's really out there.
Before I take this to Priyanka, I want to say that maybe that day is not far, that in tier 2, tier 3 cities you'll be doing recruitments. Because as law firms formalize even in smaller cities, tier 2 towns, which is not the case today, but of course, because all these young boys who are graduating from NLUs, how long will they come and work only in Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta? They will also want to go and work in tier because there will be so many law graduates.
Oh, absolutely.
Cities can only accommodate so many lawyers.
And that's true right now as well.
Is it?
It's not something which will happen just 2 years, 3 years down the line. It's already started to happen, right? If you look at some of the offices in Jaipur, in Hyderabad is obviously a big city.
Yes.
But you see some organizations, a lot of corporate houses, right? Jamshedpur, Pune.
Right.
Like slowly and steadily, it's not just Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore. You've opened up the market to a lot many more cities.
That's a good point. I'll take this to Priyanka. Your opening comment also, this talks of beyond law firms. Technically, if I could see a GC is also beyond a law firm, you take, and I've seen stories of general counsels joining law firms and vice versa also. Could you share your experience on how the horizon is expanding for lawyers?
Well, rightly pointed out, but I think the more shift I have seen is towards, partners moving towards a GC. But, if you heard the previous panel, they rightly pointed out that the grass is not green on the either side. So they have their own challenges, they have their own set of challenges. So whether you're working as in-house working as an in-house counsel or as a general counsel, you are itself running a small law firm with yourself, right? And the accountability is much higher, right? And to begin with, where you started from, whether you are have the voice at the table or not, at times you have to balance it out, right? Because you cannot just wear the hat of the legal, the lawyer. You have to wear the hat of a business enabler. You have to wear the hat of a risk mitigator as well. And at times it is challenging because sometimes, you have to balance out whether you're able to, put the lawyer band aside and, you're able to balance it out with what the business requires. So I think that's something which is very challenging at this point in time.
Point well taken. I'll go to Siddharth Batra. Siddharth, you have chosen the route of being how classic lawyers are, going to the courts, arguing every day, taking up positions on behalf of the government, and you've been an additional advocate general. How do you see from your vantage point this field changing? For example, what Rishabh does today was not known to us a few years ago, or maybe there would be a very few people individually recruiting. But how do you see this field changing?
Yeah, good evening. I think the biggest star I say is on the dice, and that's you. Frankly, more senior advocates than I believe anybody in the room, and you're quite connected to the legal community in Delhi. You know the who's and who's. And actually, you have a role to play as well. Ultimately, you see, the shows that you've been running are informative, just not for lawyers, but for the upcoming students as well. But if you ask me, the legal field now is open wide. Sky is the limit, if you ask me. Yesterday, Mr. Mohit Saraf was here, who was the managing partner of Saraf & Company. What an excellent presentation he gave on to as what legal field will be in India in the next 10 years. And I think all youngsters here in this room will really should really think about the fact that since our economy is growing, the way things are changing. When I started practice in 2004, it was not like this. I've seen myself the change. It's approximately 20 years that I've been practicing. But last 5-7 years have been a complete game changer, if you ask me, in terms of the practice areas. Now you see a variety of subjects that we have. Somebody is a competition law expert, never heard of. Somebody wants to be with the government, not just the public prosecutor. Somebody wants to be on the panel of maybe DDA, CBI, ED. Some youngsters are doing so well. So it is not just the regular practice, which when I started practicing, it was a regular practice, okay, you go to the court and there's some miscellaneous matters which you are doing, but now it's a specialized field. Like my friend sitting here, he's doing recruitment. Another thing which we could never comprehend that a lawyer will be ultimately doing. And if you see, you were talking about the GCs as well. In fact, you're right, now legal has become so important. The role of GCs has completely changed and they have the veto power. In a company, if the GC says no, everything stops there. Because the problem is that ultimately such heavy litigations can mar the company badly. You see, there's a classic example of Unitech. If you see Unitech, I think it's just gone wrong. If you see the complete case study, it's just gone wrong because they were wrongly advised at some point of time. They never realized that the money that they're dealing with is actually not theirs. It's the money which belongs to the investors. They thought it's their own money. They were dealing with a hot potato and they're completely left and right. So, and now the time is like, In fact, when youngsters are into a specialized field, in fact, you ask me after 20 years also, sometimes we go back to guys who've just got 4 years and 5 years of practice, and we ask them, can you please tell me what is happening in this? Because I can't be abreast with everything. Even yesterday we were discussing the white collar when Mr. Dubey is a specialist. Now you see that's such a specialized field, and you will see many youngsters today saying that they are doing the PMLA matters. And what is in the PMLA matter? 5-7 judgments of the Supreme Court. It's a new legislation which has come up, but it's a specialized field. You really have to go inside the judgments to find out exactly what is there, what the law is. And if you ask me, some new youngsters are also doing so well.
Yes.
You see the new special PPs. You see guys who are appearing for ED before the High Court and Supreme Court. They're youngsters, and they have taken it upon them. So all in all, if you ask me, there's so many fields which I've opened up, not just criminal practice, competition, trademark, IP. And in fact, what is completely changing is that a lawyer is now wearing a lot of hats. Like if I tell you, I was appearing in a matter before the Supreme Court, and I was representing 3 different sets of clients in one matter. In the same matter, I was appearing for a developer. In the same matter, I was appearing for a allotee of a different developer. In the same matter, I was also appearing for some individuals who had some money to be taken. So lawyers are now actually it's become so dynamic, if you ask me. So all in all, it's quite open. If you ask
Point
me.
well taken. I'll take this to Priyan. Priyan, you work with one of the largest law firms in the country. And you are part of practice management, which is a new area as far as law firms are concerned. In fact, if you could just explain what you do, that itself will explain how the field is changing, and though you are in a law firm, but itself how the role in the law firms is also being redefined. Law firms is no more just about partners, associates and juniors. It's what you do is also redefining the law firm. Could you please explain what you do?
Hi, good evening. Tarun rightly said so. So when I graduated in 2015, these allied services were not that prevalent at that point of time. Lawyers after law colleges used to go for litigation or corporate practice per se. There was nothing like business development, knowledge management, corporate communications, people working towards strategy building, etc. Or even law students going for their MBAs after law colleges. At that point of time, when I noticed in the market that there's a conventional shift in the minds of lawyers also, basically where they want to be showcased outside in the market in terms of legal awards, in terms of media PR activities, in terms of publishing opportunities, etc., while being under the guidelines of Bar Council of India, that really opened a new niche for myself also. So though I had no prior experience in that, basically, but what really helped me by joining campus ambassador programs of different organizations. So that really basically helped me synergize marketing with the working of law. Basically, how can you handle the management of a company while also keeping the legal aspects in place? So after my initial 2-year stints at LexisNexis, where I helped the editorial department, giving them inputs from a legal perspective so that they don't have to reach out to the editorial department, I joined Kranjawal & Company. Basically, where I was able to kickstart from scratch the business development, the knowledge management and corporate communications practices. What mattered to the lawyers at that time was they was doing a lot of work from 10 to 7 p.m., for example, but there's nothing to showcase it outside, out there in the media, out there on televisions, in print media, in telecom media, etc. And also, at the same time, all these awards, for example, Legal 500, Chambers Asia Pacific, Asia Law Awards, Indian awards for that matter, started gaining mileage, where all the advocates, basically law firm people or outside also, they should see that, you know, we have been doing a lot of work, but how do we translate into the public perception as such? Because you're not always vocal that, okay, I've done this many deal, I've done this USD deal, etc. How do you showcase that you're a market leader in a particular field? Or how does a law firm showcases that we are good in banking practice, we are good in competition practice? So all that nomenclature of it's a tier 1 firm, it's a tier 2 firm, it's a tier 3 firm, the awards and the law firm size were the foundation of it. So I was able to identify that though I'm a good lawyer, I did ample amount of internships, etc. I was able to relate to it. That you can be a people's people, and you can showcase them outside in the outside world. So when I started, there were very handful of people. And now when I see the market, every law firm has an opening for allied services, be it business development professionals, be it corporate communication professionals. Even for that matter, these days, HRs are preferred who have a legal background, so that they can identify the candidates in the market from that perspective, basically. So now the market is growing, and it's been 1 week only that I've joined this new practice management role at Khaitan and Co. It's a new vertical which is being built, basically, where practices can be managed, and they can be a synergized approach towards all the allied services. For example, if a practice is there and they have multiple segments, for example, corporate communications, knowledge management, business development strategy, you also need a team to synergize between all these verticals. Because in a large firms, for example, Khaitan, Shadura Machan, Cyril Machan, other firms, etc., you need someone to hold everything together. So it's a new vertical. We'll be talking more about it in future, in coming days. But that's how the market basically
It's also very interesting because all these youngsters who are going to pass out tomorrow, they may have different talents. Somebody will be good at communication. Somebody can sift out judgments and make reports. Somebody can look at government policy and put out a note on behalf of the law firm, which a lot of companies like Priyanka want to look up. What's the latest policy? This is your add-on as a law firm.
Exactly.
So their talent is harnessed. All these students are not limited to, and with times going good, law firms would have the budgets to hire such people because this only increases their business. I'll go to Rishabh. Rishabh, as your practice area is emerging, do you see some of these practice areas also emerging, which is in a sense policy information, which you call, law firms are these days coming up with reports on all government policies that come out. I think within 48 hours they have a report, which all of us like to read. Of course, there are talented individuals doing it, or the role of lawyers in family offices. India in the past 10 years has seen the emergence of family office. Every promoter has a family office. It can't do without a lawyer. That was never a career option earlier. But now you see so many powerful lawyers part of big family offices. How do you see this changing? The applicability and the utility of the lawyer changing to suit the times. Your inputs on that.
So I'll have two inputs to make primarily on that point. Yeah. So initially when we trace back the journey of lawyers, as Priyanka also mentioned, many years ago, you wouldn't have really seen a lot of legal professionals working on aspects like sending out emails with updates that would typically be part of a full-fledged corporate team or a litigation team itself. You wouldn't really have allied professionals working on those parameters. But what's happened now with law firms becoming more professional, you have knowledge management teams which are taking on the mantle to send out real-time updates to their clients, current clients as well as prospective clients. It's also an indirect marketing tool for them. So it's an important function which will definitely grow. And having a degree in law definitely helps them because you can understand where to curate the information from, where to research the relevant information from. So it's a combination of various parameters which you would have already gone through via various internships. But as a suggestion, it's always better to practice for at least 1 or 2 years. It's always going to give you more edge in the industry because you'll be able to really articulate and really understand how the ecosystem really operates. So even if you want to really move into different service offerings, which a lawyer can really pick up, my advice would be, as a legal recruiter, someone who's seen the industry very closely, to work for at least some time, then make that transition. You'll see a lot of value and benefits now. Specifically because there are a lot of people who are interested in the field. Also, one point on the other one, on the family offices part. 7-8 years ago, we just had some family offices start off, right? But now you really have a lot of family offices. And apart from just general commercial advisory, which is not really that important to them, they can really handle that with someone like a boutique firm or a tier 1 firm. But what's really important for them are estate planning issues, trust issues, and anything which falls within the purview of private client practice. So if you look at law firms as well, they're no longer really compartmentalized into just corporate M&A, finance, litigation, competition, or regulatory matters. You have separate teams like private client practice also emerge. Interestingly, at Khaitan, where Priyanka joined, they have one of the biggest private client practices, right? And that's combined with direct tax. Similarly, when you look at Cyril Merchant, they have a fantastic private client practice as well. But what really happens when you move in-house, you have to just work very closely with the promoters to ensure that all risks are mitigated. So it's not really just a legal function, it becomes like a full-fledged function of legal compliance and risk combined into one. The ideal scenario would be to have these functions separately, but because these are times when these functions are also emerging within family offices, it's currently just one person with a team of few who are leading it, but in coming times, like how we're seeing within corporate houses as well, wherein these functions are very, very different, to ensure that there's no conflict of interest per se. That will also really come out that well within family offices.
Point well taken. I'll take this to Priyanka. The role of the GC has greatly enlarged itself in the past 1 decade or so. The applicability or the utility of the GC to the company has greatly, I mean, you had one legal department 15 years ago, which was in one corner for some approval, some information. Now it's all over the company. You've been part of that change. Could you reflect on that? That how it's become integral to running the company on a day-to-day basis, not just when you have a problem, you go to the lawyer in the company. That could you please advise me on this?
I think one thing which has not changed is that people come to you with problems. So you have to accept to this fact that wherever you are sitting or wherever you are, people are going to come to you with the problems. Now, what has changed over this decade is the problems. The variety of problems, I would say, rather than that. So the problems are still there, but what kind of problems or what kind of issues that you're dealing with? Probably a decade, back when I was like pretty young in the, in this profession, and I started pretty early. At my time when I was in a law school, there was no compulsion to go for an internship. And I started early, considering of this 5 years, I started pretty early and worked with every kind of, whether an NGO or law firm, just to get an edge or an understand, where I belong to. And I think what has changed over this decade is, earlier a law office or an in-house counsel would receive a very specific legal query, very, very specific legal query. It's not the same anymore. They will come to you with the business query as well. They will come to you with the, wherein you have to balance the business, you need to enable the business with your legal capabilities, where you need to ensure that what kind of risk you are taking, when you are able to guide the board that what kind of risk that you are taking and how you can balance that risk. So that has changed immensely as part of the in-house legal role. And what my advice would be to the young lawyers would be, don't go for plum assignments, just take your assignment as they come across to you. Try to wriggle out one issue at one time, and I'm sure, as you go by, you'll be able to wear those multiple hats at multiple times.
Point well taken. I'll open this to the audience. If there are 1 or 2 questions that anybody may want to ask the panel or make a point also, you're open to do so. I'll get back to the panel. I'll now go to Siddharth. Siddharth, you have been part of this chain where when you chose the path of going to court, you would have suddenly seen a lot of your peers aren't. They are joining family offices, they are becoming GCs, they are becoming part of practice management, as Priyan is now a part. What kind of legal industry you look forward to in the next decade? This next decade will be of artificial intelligence in law firms. AI in legal practice is going to be much bigger than it is. A whole new generation of young lawyers who are born in what I call the smartphone generation. At least I would count myself, who started his life with a landline phone, and we've seen that transition. These young boys and girls would have been, the first phone that they saw was probably an iPhone or something like that. When they come in, how would that redefine the industry and also introduce new opportunities? For example, One lawyer told me just recently that, Tarun, using AI softwares could itself become a practice area in a law firm, because there will be so many AI softwares, you need an engineer come lawyer to be able to work them, because to the best output out of them. Your inputs on that, how you see this changing? Because I'm sure this will have an impact in the courtrooms as well, not in the law firms and companies.
You have asked a great question, if you ask me, and that's the buzz around, if you ask me. All law firms are thinking about it. Yesterday, or day before yesterday, Mr. Modi was there. In his speech also in United States, he said America, India, AI, but the reference was towards AI.
Towards it, yes.
Yesterday, I was referring when I earlier spoke as well, that Mr. Saraf was mentioning about it. Our economy is going to be 10 billion in the coming, he said 2036, but he said it will reach by 2030. The prediction is 2036. So what the amount of work that we have right now is going to be 5 times. Yes. Obviously, you mentioned that, look, tier 2 cities and a lot of law graduates coming up. But if you look in terms of our population, I think this industry has a lot to offer. The legal industry has a lot to offer. And I believe everybody will have their space. That's what I believe. AI, yes, very interesting, very intriguing. And any youngster, I'm telling you, that's the future. I really believe that's the future, because it's going to change the whole dynamics. It's going to change the whole thing as to how you look at a judgment which you read, which you're going to refer in a court. Look, when I started, you were referring that I chose the path to go to the court. Lawyers were one who was considered, who goes to the court was considered to be a practicing lawyer, and was considered to be a lawyer, that is a lawyer, he goes to the court. The others were considered as managers, but not any longer. Now completely, that definition is completely changed. My friends left and right may not be, I think all of you, may not be going to the court. But I think you know more about what is happening in Supreme Court sometimes than me. I'm an advocate on record, but I see when you update, oh look, this has happened in that case. Or the other day you were mentioning that senior advocate is going to mention that case tomorrow. And that's important for us to know, because sometimes we as practicing lawyers may not be holding a brief for the same client, but another client who's affected by it, who's somewhere attached to it. Coming back to AI, if you ask me, I was telling about reading the judgments for all youngsters to know that in fact in our Supreme Court also, we have judges who are around the age of 60. 56, 7 is the normal age when they reach. In fact, you know how vocal Justice Chandrachud has been about e-filing? He uses a MacBook when he's hearing cases, and it's completely online. Yes. And actually he's promoting it. The other day I saw our Chief Justice telling the Solicitor General of India that next time you please come with the iPad. That's, he said it. Next time you come, Mr. Mehta, please come with the iPad. Not like this, come with the iPad. And actually, if you ask me, my law firm has completely gone online. Last 1 month, I've told all my associates that I want all files on OneDrive. I am not going to take the file to the court. And it's become so easier. But if you ask me now, artificial intelligence is the next biggest game changer. Suppose I have a very tedious case, and I think all youngsters must note that in fact when I came, then came the SCC online, wherein you can go and just search a judgment and take it out. Because I remember earlier than me, other senior advocates, what they used to do is they used to maintain a register. When I came in, the change was the SCC online, and since I was good at it, I remember when I just started practice, I was Assistant Advocate General. My Advocate General will call me and say, he needs so-and-so judgment, because I was good in that, because I was good with computers, right? And the point I'm making is that in fact the Supreme Court judges at this age are actually making themselves adapt to the new technology as well. And what I'm telling about AI is that suppose there's a matter and you have 10 judgments, and I'm telling you this is possible, you put those 10 judgments together, you type AI and you type your question, you will have the summary of those 10 judgments as to that question, how it has been dealt with. It's going to completely change it.
In fact, to extend this, some lawyer explained to me the role of memory will go down. Today, the most successful lawyers are who have great memory. They can cite verbatim sections, also cite case laws, judgments, but that will go away because on a real-time basis, the AI tool will help you as you argue in court. So the role of memory goes down, and the role of the able to use the software goes up. And I think I'll take this to Priyan because time's up. So I think we'll take one last question. Priyan, yesterday in my discussions, I was on another panel. It said that law firms are having requests from clients that please don't use online available AI softwares for our case, because in a particular case involving a patent, this was put for some work on this online and the whole data got stolen. Somebody else was eyeing that data. Now my question is, this means that law firms will have to develop their own AI softwares, which is of course expensive, but all these softwares will also require individuals to work them, which will be lawyers. So do you see therein emerges a new practice area for the new lawyers that are coming in? Because you're looking at foreign law firms are already using AI. Indian law firms can't be much behind, the big ones of course. How do you see this changing the job opportunities for lawyers in future?
It does change a lot of opportunities for lawyers. I can speak for my firm. We have a chief technology officer, a CTO. There's an innovation team working at Khaitan. Okay. And they do work on their own AI tools. They are working on that. For example, they have law firms which have startup incubators, or they are working on technology advancements at their own law firm. For example, a law firm uses this tool called practice management tool, which basically helps you bill your hours. It sends automatic invoices to the clients, etc. You can't be dependent on third-party vendors for all these services because that's all confidential data with you. So you need to develop your own tools. And Indian law firms have been working on such tools. At my previous organization, DSK Legal, we were collaborated with a third-party vendor, which used to provide us such services. And on a day-to-day basis, a lot of startups are coming with these ideas. A lot of law firms are developing their own tools to aid the lawyers to make their lives more easier in terms of billing, in terms of innovation, in terms of legal research, in terms of having an archive, basically where all your legal research, legal repository is parked there. For example, knowledge management team works very closely with the technology team, where all the research propositions, all the judgments, all what has been researched in the law firm is parked in one repository, which is later on uploaded on OneDrive or basically different platforms. So law firms are in that process, and law students who are very technologically abled and who have a bent towards it, there are a lot of opportunities in terms of innovation, in terms of digitizing a lot of services which law firms are already providing, yes, in terms of joining knowledge management services where they can map technology with legal information.
Point well taken. What I also found interesting before he ended was Siddharth's comment where he spoke about how summaries of entire 5-6 judgments you can just find at a click of a button. That would revolutionize so many things. But I think I've been asked to finish up because we are almost out of time. Please give a round of applause for each of the panelists. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
So I think the debate today really is not about assisting lawyers in research, where AI has already been there for some time. We've got tools and tools for research. The debate which is there is AI going to replace lawyers? That's the debate I think which should be there. So any views on that?
Look, if I have to answer this, before I came into practice, I was mentioning there was no SCC. I mean, the judgments were being noted down. I think it's now made our job easier since you just click and it comes out. And now all the latest judgment come in a jiffy, come in a minute, and you get a gist. But at the same time, if you talk about AI, I think still there has to be some application. The questions for AI will have to go through your mind. What I believe is that it will actually help in maybe reducing the load, reducing the workload, reducing the number of hours that you will spend on actually preparing a case. I think it is for the betterment, but ultimately the inputs that you have to put is what I think still has to come from your mind. It will never replace, I believe, actually the human mind. But you're right, maybe sometimes we have a software where you put in 2 judgments and says, okay, what should be the correct position of law on this? Then it can replace courts also. But I do not think so that's the case.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, and just a small line on that. AI, machine learning will never replace lawyers, but they'll enable lawyers to do their work more diligently and effectively. They'll just save time. That's about it. They'll always be enablers rather than being replacers. At least that's my thought process. You never know how that emerges later. So
I'll second my co-panelists. I think we should take AI as an enabling tool, right? There is a change, there is a shift, but the analytical ability of lawyers, I think we should not think that it's gonna deplete or it's gonna, go away. It's definitely, it is required, and AI is just gonna enable that to make the things quicker and,
Yes, I think as a disputes lawyer, I can say that there are a lot of emotions involved when you are arguing a case. So I totally agree with you, but yeah, I just wanted to put that question.
But look, you try just last comment, you try the chat GPT, you'll see the emotions there also. More than what you've put, if you're talking about emotions.
Emotions and arguments, I meant.
Okay.
When you're in court.
But
ChatGPT cannot go and argue in court.
No, when drafting, if you see drafting, it'll come out actually.
That's it from now. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the question.